Check almost any standard textbook, and it will tell you the Ganges River starts right here, pouring directly out of the Gomukh Glacier. But geographically speaking, that's incorrect. If we strictly follow the maps and the science, the violent, freezing water rushing out of this ice cave is the Bhagirathi River. The real engine of this water system is the Alaknanda. It functions as a massive, incredibly steep natural highway rocketing down from the high altitudes, carrying enormous kinetic energy. The Ganga is the final result of a massive, violently active mountain collision system. As the Alaknanda plummets southward, the sheer vertical drop of the Himalayas acts as an accelerator. The water constantly gains mass and extreme speed. In this topological cross-section, side rivers loaded with ice and boulders slam into the Alaknanda at 5 major tolls called the Panch Prayag. Because of the extreme gradient, these aren't calm mergers. They are high-speed, kinetic collisions churning up massive energy. This entire mountain journey peaks at Devaprayag. This is the final junction where the hyper-accelerated Alaknanda finally hits the Bhagirathi. It is only right here, at the very bottom of this steep topographical funnel, after absorbing 5 independent water systems, that the combined stream mathematically and geographically earns the name Ganga. Once the newly formed river drops out of the mountains and hits Haridwar, its physics change immediately. The geographical gradient drops to virtually 0 degrees. Without that steep mountain slope pushing it forward, the water's vertical kinetic energy has nowhere to go but sideways. The river is forced to widen, and the flow drastically slows down. This creates a major mechanical problem for left bank tributaries like the Kosi River. It originates high up in the Himalayas, a mountain range that is geologically young, brittle, and highly prone to erosion. The Kosi carries heavy loads of rocks and silt at high speeds. But the moment it hits the flat plains, its speed drops to 0. It instantly loses the energy required to push its own rocks, causing the debris to pile up and completely jam the riverbed. This triggers immense hydrostatic pressure. Millions of liters of water back up behind the jam, and with nowhere else to go, the river violently ruptures its own banks, carving entirely new paths directly through populated villages. The Kosi's notorious path shifting is the direct mechanical result of hydrostatic pressure reacting to a 0 gradient plane. The tributaries entering from the right bank, coming from the peninsular plateau, present an entirely different geographical paradox, specifically the Son River. The general slope of this entire region flows eastward or westward, yet the Son River flows straight north toward the Ganga. On the surface, this looks like water defying gravity. This knot of tectonic fault lines reveals why. Millions of years ago, the collision between the Indian and Eurasian plates violently fractured the crust, creating a deep rift valley. This subterranean channel has its own northward slope, shielding the river from the surface topography. The flow of this massive river today is strictly dictated by the ghosts of tectonic collisions that happened millions of years before humans even existed. We constantly try to box in this massive physical force using invisible administrative state lines. People often assume the river flows straight from UP to Bihar, completely missing that it briefly grazes Jharkhand, or they memorize its precise entry into UP at Bijnor and exit at Balia. But the river ignores our maps. It follows topography. This mapping confusion leads to a major engineering myth, the belief that India's tallest dam, the Tehri Dam, was built directly on the Ganga to control it. The geographical reality is that the Tehri Dam sits entirely on the Bhagirathi River. It is isolated high up in the mountains, well before the Devaprayag junction where the Ganga actually forms. Despite our massive concrete structures and perfectly drawn political borders, human boundaries are functionally invisible to the river's actual geomorphology. As the river enters its final stages in West Bengal, its momentum is practically dead. It becomes choked by thousands of miles of accumulated Himalayan silt. The Farakka barrage exists for a very specific engineering purpose, to save the Kolkata port from being completely buried in mud. The barrage physically diverts a high-speed blast of water down the Hooghly River. It acts exactly like a giant toilet flush, blasting the accumulated silt out to sea just to keep the shipping lanes deep enough to operate. Finally, the river fractures under its weight into the Hooghly and the Padma, fanning out into the vast Sundarbans Delta. The Ganga is a volatile, living system, a constant balancing act between tectonic history, kinetic energy, and the human engineering trying to stay ahead of gravity.